Hello everyone. Today we will discuss MPC 001 Block 1 Unit 4. Before that we have discussed Block Unit 1, 2 and 3 where we have discussed what is information processing, biological basis of process, information processing, learning and memory. So that is what we have discussed till now. Now in this unit we will discuss models of information processing. So main models are Vog and Norman model, Atkinson and Siffin model, level of recall, level of processing, and self-reference effect, and the connectionist model of memory. And these are the things that we are going to discuss here. So if we talk about introductory part, you can say uh, like uh, Nazier 1967, one of the most you can say influential researcher in cognition, defined it as a study of how people encode. Now we know what is encoding, and structure, how we store information, and how we retrieve when it is required, or how we use our knowledge. So this is what all about information processing, because that is very important, because human beings are most you can say they are able to gather knowledge and store it and use it whenever it is required, even the complex one. So that is why study of human being is very important in information processing, so that we can understand how we function. And information processing is the change of information in any manner detectable by observer. So, and with the field of cognitive psychology, information processing is an approach to the goal understanding thinking. So if you want to understand the thinking, and then you have to understand the information processing thing. And after the invention of this computer one, so you can say you can compare human information processing as a computer, where your mind, yani your thought, or how you process information, all those things is software, and your brain is being hardware. So there is a difference between mind and brain. Brain is like a structural part, like whatever we have spoke about, like your brain, your temporal lobe, your occipital lobe, your frontal lobe, all those things. So that is a structure that you can scan through fMRI, MRI, and X-ray, CT scan, etc. And mind is the function, how you function, right? That is the mind. How you process information, how you store information, all those things comes under. And so that mind is a software and the brain is as a hardware, right? So you can compare that. So the and then now the thing is, like, if you want to understand the information processing, so you must have some model how information process, how that function. So there are many uh, researcher and scientists, they have developed different model to understand, just like this computer model. They have formulated different models to understand how our how we do information processing. So there are much big differences also. Like you can say like people they see information processing in a different way. So what are these different models that we are going to discuss in this chapter? So objective of this unit or chapter, you can say, define information processing approach, discussing the various model of information processing, and explain level of recall and describe level of processing. Okay, how we recall, what are the different levels, and how we process the information. So that is what we are going to discuss in this unit. Okay, now we will discuss Wog and Norman's model of primary and secondary memory. So Wog has given like primary and secondary memory dualistic approach of information processing model, and this primary and secondary term has been taken from you can say from William James, and they said that primary memory is a short-term memory, and whereas secondary memory is a long-term memory. So he tried to find out the how much we can retain in short term memory, and he also said this is a limited so short term memory is a has limited space, so you can store limited thing. And then again he tried to, through their experiments, they tried to quantify how much information you can store, and you can say another thing, main focus was how you forget actually, and how you goes into the uh, secondary memory, means long term memory. So and this, though this concept of primary and secondary memory was given by William James, but Wog and Norman, they tried to quantify the properties of primary memory basically, and short-term storage, that like we say. So according to them, short-term memory has limited capacity, so that loss of information from it was postulated to occur not as a simple function of time. मतलब it is not about कि you only forget because you have not recalled any information for a longer period of time. Suppose you have learned right now something, and after a day or after few hours I ask you, so you will forget it if it is not rehearsed. So they say it is not only, and we call it decay. Why decay? Because it is happening with the time, it is decaying, right? And so they say it is not only the function of time, means it is not because of time that we call decay, but it happens because of displacement also. Displacement of old items, right? They said it is because of old items we display it. So it is like we have a certain space, and these are the columns, so we stored information here. So suppose this limited in space is filled, then you have to remove something to enter new information. So that is a displacement, you can say. If you want to remember this information, you have to delete this information. So because you have a limited period of limited space of space in your short term memory, right? So this is what they said. And then this is the model, like you can say primary, and when you rehearse it, then it goes into the secondary. But their main interest was the primary memory. So, and if you don't rehearse, and with time it decay and forgetting happens. So one is decay, another is interference, you can say. Even interference means when there is some new information, so older information goes out and we forget. So that kind of thing happens. So what they did is, now we'll talk about their experiment, what they did. So they have done, they have taken list of 16 digits to study the primary memory, and that were read to the subject at the rate of 1 digit per second or 4 digit per second. यानी either 1 digit per second or 4 digit per second. There are two ways to present the information to the subject, right? The purpose of the presenting digit every second or quarter second was to determine whether forgetting was function of decay, as we have discussed, because of time, or interference, or because of interference because new information is coming in. So they theorized, and it is right also, if the forgetting was function of decay, means because of time we are forgetting, then less recall could be expected with the slower rate, right? So slower rate means 1 digit per second, another one is 4 digit per second. So if it is happening because of time, if forgetting is happening because of time, then in 1 digit per second we are taking more time. What we are doing, we are taking more time to remember the digits, right? 1 digit per second. So when we have more time and 16 digits are presented to you, then there will be high chances to forget, because ज़्यादा time lapse हो रहा है, we are lapsing more time, so older information will like be forgotten, right? So that was the hypothesis, because it is consuming more time, so more uh, like forgetting will happen. And if it is not like that, then where we are presenting the information like 4 digit per second, then there will be less forgetting in that, any more recall will be there. So if forgetting was function of the interference in the PM, any primary memory, then no difference in recall could be expected according to the presentation rate. So if it is happening because of interference, because we are information that is 16 digit that we are giving to our subject, right? So and forgetting is happening because of interference, because of information present, like 16 digit we are entering, so one information is affecting other information because we have a limited storage capacity, right? So it doesn't matter, because it is dependent on your storage space, so it doesn't matter, it is uh, like information is presented in like 1 digit per second or 4 digit per second, it doesn't matter, because it is a matter of storage. So if storage is filled there, and then next information will be will replace the older information. So that will happen. So in that case what will happen is, there will be no difference in recall or in forgetting, you can say. There will be no difference in that, because it is happening because of space, not because of the time. So that is what they have hypothesized, right? So uh, and because we are presenting both similar information in both the presentation rates, there were two presentation rates as we discussed, like 4 digit per second, 1 digit per second. So and then it is like when they have conducted this experiment later on also, so where like they have presented from 1 to 10 digit, in a given period of time, and yielded the data consistent with the rate of forgetting expected from the original model. So the rate of the forgetting for two presentation rate is similar. Yani rate of forgetting for both the presentation methods, like either you can say, if you want to understand, like if 1 digit per second or 4 digit per second, the rate of forgetting was similar. So both were similar. So that indicates that interference seems to be greater factor than decay in forgetting in PM. So he found out that it is the interference, not the decay, that is more important. So that is what they found out. And the information was verbally presented, like digits or words, whatever you want to say. So that seems true in our day to day conversation also, where we remember last sentence like told by or yeah, uttered by different other people. uh, right, so we remember it exactly, but after some time we are not able to understand when other information is presented, we are not able to recall that thing. So that was Vogue and Norman's model. So they say like they have given two three concepts, the one on that you have to remember for your exams, like primary memory, secondary memory, decay, and interference, right? So you understand these concepts. Decay is because of time, interference because of new information you forget. Hmm. So that is what the Vaughan and Norman's model. And next we'll talk about Atkinson and Siphon stage model. So now we will discuss Atkinson and Siffin's the stage model, and that is widely used model that we have. Uh, so Atkinson and Siffin in 1968 they have given this model, right? And the key element of this model is that learning and memory as discontinuous and multi stages. Yani they are not, they are discontinuous, and it is not stepwise it will happen, and it is a multi stage model. That is why we call it stage model, right? It is hypothesized that new information is taken in, we take new information, and it is in some way manipulated before it is stored, and we it is manipulated and then it goes into the further like short term memory or long term memory. So he recognizes they recognizes like three types of stages of memory. One is sensory memory, and other is short term memory or working memory. We have discussed like what is working memory and short term memory in previous lectures. And another one is long term memory. So this is the graphical representation of this model. So let's see it. Like this is the external information that is coming in, that goes to the sensory memory, and this sensory memory retain the information for very less period of time. Like for visual and all, it stores information only for half second, you can say. And for auditory memories, it is 4 to 5 second. So auditory memory has more uh, time in sensory storage or sensory memory, right? And then some kind of initial processing happens, and that goes into then it the information goes into short term memory, right? And from short term memory, either we forget, similarly like sensory memory we forget, and in sensory memory like we like concentrate on we attend some information if we are attentive to that information, or you can say there is a process, automatically you process that information, and that goes into short term memory, right? And in short term memory, like if you repeat, yani if repetition is done, then it remains in the short term memory, and then it can go to long term memory. And to when it goes to long term memory, this happens because of elaboration, like you are giving meaning to that information based on your previous experiences, that we call elaboration, right? And then coding is like converting in a certain form so that it can be stored in long term memory. And short term memory, we call it working memory also, because it is the place where information can will come into uh, this place from long term memory, so that we can process it and we can give some response. Suppose you have seen something, you want to drink water, and so and then that information, like how you will drink, where from where you will take the water, all the things is based on your previous experiences, that is stored in your long term memory. So when it is required, that information comes down into your short term memory and you give that response, right? So that is what work, that is why we call it working memory, because where we like manipulate information uh, when it is required. So this is the basic model of Atkinson and Siphon. We'll go more in the detail of that, like as we have discussed, like in sensory uh, register, yeah, sensory memory, the information remains for a very brief period of time, like from several seconds. As I have told you, this occurs in as little as half second for visual stimuli and 4 to 5 second for auditory stimuli. So that is what sensory information का जो period है, that is this much. And the transfer of new information quickly to the next stage of processing is of critical importance. So if something is very important, so because we have a limited capacity, so we have a lot of information that is coming from the environment. So if it is important for us, so how we they decided is important, because this depends on our attention and concentration and our previous experiences also. So if it is important, if you feel that information is important, and then immediately it goes to the second level from the secondary memory. So sensory memory acts as a portal of all the information is to become a part of memory. So sensory memory is a portal where all the information comes in, and there it will be decided that it is important or not, it is critical or not, and then it will go to long term sorry, short term memory or long term memory directly, it can goes. So there are many ways to ensure information transfer and many method of facilitating the transfer. So how you can facilitate, there are different methods. So main important methods are attention, like if it is important, you have to give the attention to that, and automaticity are the two major influences. Automaticity means automatically it goes, because it is related, there is something that is like you already know, it is related to that, so that automatically that influences like your short term memory, sorry, sensory memory, and that help this information to go for further processing. And then information that is attend to and recognized in sensory register may be passed to second stage of information, that is short term memory. So if you have recognized it, like it is useful for you, and you have given attention to it, or you have given attention to that information because you feel that it is important for you, so it goes to working memory, means short term memory. And the duration of the short term memory is 20 to 30 seconds, remember that. And this stage is viewed as an active and conscious memory, because as I told you earlier also, the information from sensory memory also comes here, and information from long term memory also comes in, and it is manipulated there. So it is the part of the memory that being actively processed while new information is being taken in. So it processes actively the new information, and some of the information reaching short term memory is processed by being rehearsed. So you rehearsed sometime, because when you learn anything you rehearse it. So when you rehearse it, so that is the one way to process the information in short term memory, so that it can go to your long term memory. That is, and by having attention focused on it, perhaps by being repeated over and over, and repetition again and again is called maintenance rehearsal. What we call maintenance, because we are trying to maintain the information, and we call it maintenance rehearsal. Suppose you have learned some new number of some any person, so repeat it many times so that you can remember it. And perhaps by being processed in some other way, and maybe some other baby may be there, and will link up to the other information already stored in memory. So when suppose you have like in last lectures I say that suppose you have seen some different kind of chair, and you have a concept of chair in stored in your long term memory. So when it matches, so you process it, yes, it is chair. It is, though you have seen a like dining chair, but now you are seeing the beach chair, and now you can relate it, both are the like both are the chair, because basic characteristics are similar. So when we do this kind of elaboration, we call it elaboration rehearsal. We try to connect it with old information. So that is what elaborate rehearsal is. And then also we have discussed this thing like storage of short term memory is 5 plus 2, and a number of the units which can be processed at given time in short term memory. 5 plus minus 2 we have discussed in last lectures. And if we rehearse like in any way, if we rehearse the information, that may go into long term memory. And in long term memory, is, you can say, it may be for days, months, years, or for lifetime. So there is like, and there is unlimited storage, you can say. We can store a lot of information there, है ना? And whenever it is required, you can like withdraw the information or retrieval जिसको बोलते हैं. You can retrieve the information for your own use when it is required from your long term memory, right? Also, and then next question is, you can say, how we organize our long-term memory, because long-term memory has a lot of storage. So if all the information is jumbled up, then you won't be able to recall. It is like a library, you can say, and where like every book is according to subject, according to alphabet, is like stored. If you mix everything, you won't be able to recall it, right? So similarly, they try to find out how we organize information. So so the thing is, like they say कि we do categorization. Like categorization system we have, as we discussed in last example, chair wala. In like we have a basic concept or category of chair, and if we get some new information related to that chair, we store it with that category only. And if we see something similar and we recognized on the basis of that concept and categories, so that is what, that is how we like organize long-term memory based, right? So that is all. And then there was another scientist, that is also we have discussed in earlier like lectures briefly, at Tulving 1972. He has given the concept of episodic memory and the semantic memory. So episodic memory क्या है? Episodic memory are those which give a subject the sense of remembering the actual situation. Like you have celebrated your birthday and you are very happy about that, and some you have got like good surprises and all. So that images and your things, personal experiences, emotions that are stored in, when it is stored, we call it episodic memory. And uh, like you remember those things as it is, so we call it episodic memory. Other thing is like semantic memory. Semantic memory, as I told you earlier in lectures also, it is related to abstract information, rules, regulations, words, all the concept, all those things. And so we store that information, and that is what we call semantic memory. And when combined with episodic and semantic memory, there are researchers, they call it declarative memory. Like episodic and semantic memory, in as combined, we call it declarative memory. I have shared that chart with you also in last lecture, so you can refer that chart also. So uh, then there is another type of memory that also we have discussed in last class, last lectures, few lectures, so that you can say that, and I'm just briefly telling you, this is procedural memory. So procedural memory is kind of like learning anything, like how to do something, like driving a car or cooking food or making tea. So these are the or riding a bike. So these are the things that procedural memory, where you learn things how to do something. That is what you can say we call procedural memory. And now Hmm. So there are these are the procedural memories, and then there is one more concept, we call it imagery. Imagery as the memory structure collecting is sort and is storing the information related to pictures, like what you have seen as that like photographic thing. So that images you have in your mind. And then there is like information processing in three-stage model, that we are discussing. Atkinson and Stephen makes an important distinction between concept of memory and memory stores. To understand memory and memory stores, so memory is different and memory store is different in this concept. So the memory refers to the idea being retained, whatever is retained, while store refers to the structural component of content information, okay, where the information stored. Like one is container, you can say, okay, what is memory, and memory store is different. The memory store is a place where the information is stored. So so it also indicate that indicating the how long the item has been retained does not necessarily reveal where it is located. So it is in long term memory or short term memory, you cannot locate it. So it doesn't matter. So because memory store and memory is different. Long term memory may be long term and short term, but memory store maybe it is a different thing, right? So that is what he wanted to, or they wanted to communicate. And information processing from one store to another is largely controlled by subject. Subject is like individual. Information briefly held in the sensitivity is scanned by the subject, and selected information is introduced into short term storage. So it is like the individual decides what is important for them, what information they want to, maybe depending on their experiences and learning, what information is important, which information will go into the short term memory, which information we have to, you can say, repeat and rehearse so that it can go to your long term memory. So it is basically done by the subject, right? So this is all about Atkinson and Siffen stage model. And I think ये आपको समझ में आया होगा. And in now we will discuss the level of recall.